Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the peak-to-peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
On that train, well, don't they know that it goes to nowhere? The tracks never change, they just go around in circles, they're carried away.
The song that you are currently listening to is called Who's on That Train, and it is written and performed by Andrew Cooney. This particular version of the song was performed live at Muse Performance Space, and you can check out this full performance along with 2 other videos from the Muse Performance Space and a video from a quarantine live stream on Andrew Cooney's YouTube channel, Andrew Cooney Music. That's also his Facebook handle, by the way, and you can follow him at Rufus_Wilbury on Instagram, or find his website, which is linked in the podcast description below. He'll be coming to Eldora very soon. More information coming up later on the podcast.
It's okay in the end, and I don't know how we know that so well. It don't bother me. Who's on that train? Who's on that train? Drives that train. Oh, don't they look familiar? Something's the same, but I just can't place my finger. I hear my name.
Hello there, everybody. My name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to this week's Music of the Mountains, Where to Be and What to See, brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast. This is a different episode of Music of the Mountains because it's a combination episode. This serves as this week's Music of the Mountains as well as a Then and Now episode. I will be bringing you an interview with this week's musician that I conducted last year, as well as another interview that I just conducted with him for this week's column in the Mountaineer newspaper. We hope that you guys were able to get in your Pet of the Year submissions and your articles for the upcoming Thanksgiving edition of the Mountaineer newspaper. And we hope that you submit articles and other items for our next It's Your Turn edition, which should hopefully be coming very soon. If I have my dates right, that next It's Your Turn edition should be coming on January 30th, 2025. So keep your eyes and ears out. Speaking of submitting for the paper, though, I want to cut real quick to a special message brought to you by the Mountaineer.
Are you interested in advertising? The Mountaineer has advertising in print, on our website, through our social media. We have 3 guides each year, coupon insertions, and more. Want more information? Email marketing@themountaineer.com or give Bethany a call at 720-960-2900.
All right, I think that's all the preliminary stuff we got to get out of the way. As usual, our music mentions will be brought up at the end of this episode. But for now, let's travel back in time to January 3rd, 2023, right at the beginning of last year, almost 2 years ago. Our guest this week, do you mind just introducing yourself real quick?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Cooney from Denver, Colorado.
And back when I initially promoted you, you were about to perform at Busey Brews, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. I'll be there the 22nd, I believe.
So Andrew, I want to know how you got started in music in the first place. How long has music been a part of your life?
Well, my grandmother was a jazz piano player and a piano teacher. And when I was like 4 or 5 years old, she would sit me on her lap and teach me some little things here and there. And eventually it clicked and I kept taking piano lessons and just kind of never looked back from there, really. Picked up a couple different instruments along the way and
Is there a particular instrument that you've gravitated towards over the years? Was there maybe even a particular instrument that stuck out to you at the beginning?
I don't know. It was like every couple of years I kind of picked up something new. I started with piano and then moved to sax and did that for all the way through high school. And I picked up guitar and bass and in middle school, and now I'm still playing those, and mostly bass and guitar. But yeah, I guess bass is probably what I'd say is like my main instrument at this point.
Do you have a particular style of music that you like to focus on, or do you focus on a variety of different styles?
As far as what I play, I'm all over the place. I mean, I guess that goes along with what I listen to as well. I know at different points in my life, different types of music stuck out, and I never really turned away from too many things once they became part of the repertoire.
Are there any particular musical influences that have stuck out to you over the years?
Well, for saxophone, when I was a kid, I really loved Paul Desmond. I just thought he was, the bee's knees, and spent a lot of time listening to his work with Dave Brubeck, and that was like I set my alarm to in like middle school was the album Time Out by Dave Brubeck. Start my day with some Paul Desmond saxophone. But these days, George Harrison probably a big influence, and even hate to admit it, I guess, but Dave Matthews played probably a big part in my songwriting style and how I play guitar as well.
When did you start performing live? When was the first time you started performing for other people?
Well, I had like piano recitals as a kid. When I was like 5 and 6, I started doing like just recitals at my school and stuff. And same thing with this school band, like symphonic band and whatnot. So I've been performing in band competitions or recitals for most of my life at this point. But as far as the classic gig, like a bar or a venue, started in, I guess, late high school and then early college was when I started playing singer-songwriter type solo gigs and taking bass gigs.
Is there anything in particular about performing live that sticks out to you?
It is an opportunity to bust out of your shell a little bit, do something that might make you uncomfortable. Like, I'm not the most crazy outgoing person. I consider myself slightly more reserved, but being on stage is a great release and forcing myself to be vulnerable and put my work out in front of however many people are there at the time.
Is there anything that you hope audience members will be able to take away from your shows when they come and see you?
I just, want them to see that I care about what I'm doing, really. A lot of my songs are personal for me. They're like therapy in a way. I'm like trying to connect in a way with people that they can level with. Like, I may not know exactly what he's talking about, but I feel the sentiment or something along those lines,
And what have been some of your favorite aspects about writing original songs and performing them for a crowd?
I mean, it's just that, finding ways to make myself feel better while also putting things in a way in which other people can understand and connect with on a personal level, or just in general. Maybe just the melody catches someone and sticks in their ear and they do the dishes with that stuck in their head and it made it a little bit better or something,
Well, is there anything else you want to add before we travel forward in time?
Yeah, well, I'm in a band called 10th Mountain Division. We play all over Colorado, and we actually just got back from a 2-month tour across the East Coast in the Midwest and down to Texas and all over the place. And we're getting ready to get back in the studio, hopefully here this winter. As far as gigs, we're playing all over the state. We're actually playing 3 shows with Pigeons Playing Ping Pong, which is a relatively bigger jam band. We're playing in Aspen and Boulder and Frisco with them. We'll be at the Boulder Theater with them in mid-March, like St. Patrick's Day weekend. And then we're playing Winter Wondergrass, which is a very big festival out in Steamboat, which we're very excited for. Always a good time and good names and rubbing elbows with some important people that are good to rub elbows with. As far as solo releases, I do have some stuff I'm working on. Nothing's announced yet, but if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, there will definitely be some news regarding a collaboration that I'm working on with another Denver musician. But yeah, that's about it.
In that case, I think that's pretty much all I have for this particular interview.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And now, let's travel forward in time to November 4th, 2024. I know we just heard from you, but can you reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Andrew Cooney. I'm a Denver-based musician.
And you will be performing a solo show at Eldora very soon.
That is correct. I believe it's the 30th of November, right?
That is correct. I'll get more into the details by the end of the interview. But I wanted to catch up with you real quick. Since we last spoke, how's your musical life been? What's been going on in your musical career?
Well, I play a lot of solo gigs, just me and acoustic guitar, all over the Front Range and in the mountains, from Telluride to Copper to Denver to Boulder to Eldora. And I kind of a bass player, gun for hire with a lot of bands. I just got off of a 10-day run with a band called Kind-Hearted Strangers, which started in Colorado but is based out of Nashville now, which included shows at the Aggie and the Gothic, as well as Steamboat and Grand Grand Junction and Telluride, and a couple in between. I have a couple other random projects that I play for. I'm playing with a hodgepodge country band next week in Denver at the Two Moons with some Boulder musicians. We'll call them Last Call, members of Andy, Ray, and the Mighty Fines, as well as Livered on the River, I believe. I have a project called Cashmere Sweater, which is a drummer from 10th Mountain Division, and my good friend on guitar, Kevin Hinder, who has been a Denver musician for 8 years or so, 10 years. And we're promoting currently a fundraiser show at Cervantes' Other Side called A Cashmere Christmas, which is now the second annual, and we're raising money for Backline, which is a mental health resource for musicians and gig workers.
I wanted to add a couple of pieces of information here. The first is that technically speaking, the band is not called Brandy Ray and the Mighty Fines. Brandy Ray is the leader of Brandywine and the Mighty Fines. I interviewed her in a previous podcast episode. I also wanted to shout out the members of Cashmere Sweater for a very particular reason. There's Andrew, of course. There's the 10th Mountain Division drummer Tyler Gwinn, and the current guitarist Kevin Hinder. When the spinoff group initially formed, keyboard player Campbell Thomas was part of the original lineup, and the original three all embraced alter egos. Andrew embraced the alter ego Chris Staplegun, Tyler Gwinn embraced Charles Romancin, and Campbell Thomas embraced Curl's Sweatshirt. Kevin Hinder does not yet have an alter ego, although he will have one soon. Anyway, back to your music career in general, Andrew. Do you want to talk to us again about how you got started in music and maybe talk a little bit more about your musical career over the years?
Well, my grandmother was a very talented pianist. She played jazz and classical, and she introduced me to the piano when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And she was a teacher and a piano teacher, and so she got me started on lessons, and I kind of took that and ran with it for a while, and eventually started playing saxophone in the middle school band. And then a buddy of mine convinced me that I should play bass because he wanted to start a band and needed a bass player. Since I read bass clef from piano, he thought I would be a good bass player, and it kind of turned out he was right. Bass really lined up with my attitude and my outlook and musical style and what I think is important and everything. And I'd say I'm a bass player by trade for the most part ever since then. And like I said, I play guitar as well, but I performed in middle school with the jazz band. I performed in high school like at Disney World and stuff like that. Even in middle school I had like a little rock band and we played in my garage on Halloween. I've been doing it for quite a while, since 2001.
Of course, in the previous interview, you talked about how you delve into a variety of different musical styles because you don't like to stick to one style. Is that still true for you?
Absolutely. It sounds boring to pigeonhole myself into one thing, I like a lot of stuff and I play a lot of stuff, so it's more fun to me that way.
Is there a particular style of music that you've gravitated more toward over the years, or do you like playing in a variety of styles?
Well, I've been in like a Motown style band before where we played strictly soul music, Motown, stuff along those lines, and that's fun and I appreciate that point in my life. But I've also been in rock and roll bands. I've played with bluegrass groups. I don't know. I never really settled on one. I just find it fun to learn new stuff and keep it fresh.
And can you talk a little bit more about your songwriting over the years?
Yeah, I write quite a bit. I wrote a bunch of songs in my band 10th Mountain Division before this, and I, in the past couple years, have partnered up with Andy Frasco, who is now Denver-based, and I sent him a couple of my songs a couple years ago, and one of them clicked with him, and we recorded it and put it on his last record, and then since then we've just kind of been writing partners, and this next album coming out, I think I helped to write on 4 or 5 of them and recorded on a couple, and I've been really trying to dive into that world more, especially since 10th Mountain Division has been on hiatus. I think my main goal in music is to pursue a career, songwriting, ghostwriting, producing, being in the studio, creating music with other artists in that way.
I find it really interesting to put these two interviews in perspective now that time has passed. In the January 3rd, 2023 interview that we conducted, Andrew mentioned that he was going to be working with a Denver musician, but he didn't specify who. Now, of course, he can talk about that project with his song contribution to Le Optimist, the latest record from Andy Frasco and the UN, having been released last year. He'll mention the title of that song a little bit later. But I assume that because you like playing in a wide variety of styles, that you also like writing in a wide variety too.
Absolutely.
Again, in regards to writing, are there particular styles you've gravitated towards? Are there particular styles that are more challenging? Are there particular styles you haven't tried yet that you would love to someday?
Well, my original writing style, like I started writing my own songs probably in like middle school or high school, and I was influenced a lot by Jack Johnson and Dave Matthews at the time. And so I guess whatever you would call that, like I don't even know how to pigeonhole their genres, but definitely, I guess not poppier, but that style of pop with Jack Johnson was like an early lean-to for sure. And lately, I mean, since then I've written random songs here and there, but in a lot of like rock and roll influenced, like Tom Petty, even like soul Bill Withers style influence, like a singer-songwriter type stuff that's more like acoustic guitar and vocal, not quite a Bob Dylan, but something along those lines. And that's kind of how one of the songs that I wrote for Andy, that's the one that kind of broke me out, was like a singer-songwriter style track. It's called Everything Bagel, actually. But I recently wrote a song that I was inspired by a concert I went to from like a 90s band that kind of has a bunch of weird samples and rock guitar and noises and things that weren't traditionally part of songs always. So yeah, I mean, I definitely bounce around quite a bit and kind of feed off whatever I'm feeling in the moment.
And what's your favorite part about the songwriting process? What keeps you coming back?
I guess I just can't shake the urge or like the thought of when something pops into my head, like that's a good idea for a song. It's just never gone away. And things are constantly popping up in my day-to-day life where I find myself writing down a little one-liner, or even sometimes a verse comes out quickly, or even a whole song. That's just something I experienced that led me to have that thought. I think this would be a good song. My phone is full of just note after note of random little experiences and thoughts and ideas, and I just never lost the desire to keep that going.
Having performed in multiple different groups as well as multiple times solo over the years, is there a particular kind of performance that you prefer, solo or in a group?
Yeah, performing, I always say, it's a drug. Being on stage and garnering reaction from a crowd. And I've played shows nearly sold out, or sold out Ogden Theater, or the sold out Gothic Theater, and that feeling when 1,000 people are screaming at you, or even the Levitt Pavilion where there's 3,000 people screaming at you. There's nothing like it in that aspect of satisfaction of, I put a lot of work in and I made it to this point with the full band kind of thing. And then as the solo stuff goes, a lot of obviously way smaller gigs, and sometimes you're not even there to try to get a reaction, you're just playing background music, and it's just kind of a test of how much you really care about the craft, and it kind of proves to me that I'm doing it for myself more than anything, and I do it because it feels good. Just playing feels good as well as getting the response from the crowd.
And now that some time has passed, what would you say now is your favorite part about performing live? Do you have a particular favorite part?
I don't know, like I said, it's a drug. It charges you up in a certain way that's kind of indescribable and always keeps you wanting to come back for more, even through getting in a van with 4 smelly dudes and eating gas station food, somebody cheering for you after you play a song that you wrote or a song that you worked hard on. It's a feeling unlike any other.
And is there anything now that you hope audience members will take away from your shows when they come to see you, regardless of where you're performing?
Really the main thing is I want people to feel what I'm feeling on stage. I'm having a good time. I'm doing the things that I love and connect with them in a way that portrays that truthfully, and it can gain some sort of intrinsic energy off of me putting myself out there to do something that I really care about.
I also wanted to talk real briefly about your involvement with 10th Mountain Division and specifically with Kind-Hearted Strangers. I think this is the only time that this has happened, but I ended up actually writing a Music of the Mountains column for Kind-Hearted Strangers without ever interviewing them. At least as far as I know, I didn't interview them. Maybe I did, but the interview that I can find that is actually on the podcast right now is in the March 6, 2023 episode of the Mountaineer Podcast, where correspondent Dango Rose ended up interviewing members of Kind-Hearted Strangers. The article that I wrote came out on Thursday, March 9th. And if I did end up interviewing anybody from the group, I can't find that interview right now, and I may have to look again. Still, though, I've definitely heard about Kind-Hearted Strangers and 10th Mountain Division over the years. Can you tell us a bit more about your involvement in both of those groups?
Well, I've known both bands about the same amount of time. I met them around the same time when I started working in Boulder in 2016, I want to say, 2017, 2016. And I joined 10th Mountain Division in 2017 as their full-time bass player, and I would sub with Kind-Hearted Strangers over those years periodically. And eventually I lived with 10th Mountain Division guys all in the same house at one point, but also myself and Mark Towns, the songwriter and lead singer for Kind-Hearted Strangers. We're roommates for a bit, and we've written songs together, and there's always a connection with both bands. And now that 10th Mountain Division, the schedule is freed up there, and Mark reached out needing somebody to fill in for a few shows. Like, of course, I was excited and willing to help him out.
The last time we talked, you did briefly mention that you were working on original solo material. Is that still in the works?
Yeah, I have some work put into it at this point. Obviously, it's not release ready. I have a couple more songs to record and things to put in line, but I'm definitely slowly but surely working on that project, and it's something I've been wanting to do my whole life, pretty much. And this is kind of now the opportunity to really make that happen.
Well, yeah, in that case, is there anything else in general about your solo performance or anything else you want to promote or add?
Well, keep a lookout for the new Andy Frasco album. I don't know what it's going to be called yet, I guess, but there's a bunch of really cool songs on there that we collaborated with a lot of really cool people, including Steve Poltz, he wrote all the songs with Jewel back in the 90s. They were married, and he was one of the writing forces behind her success then. There's collaborations with Billy Strings and Daniel Donato, which are some really great guitar players. And there's just a lot of fun things going on, and it was a really cool experience to be a part of the record from start to finish, so definitely keep a lookout for that. I'll be playing around town, and also I've been playing with another Boulder local, Bob Barrick. We've been doing a Jammy Buffett tribute show. We've done a couple so far. We're calling it Jammy Buffett. We're obviously jamming out these classic Jammy Buffett songs. And we're playing at Gold Hill on December 6th, so that's always a fun time there. I've heard it gets quite rowdy. I've never been to the indoor venue. I've only seen the outdoor shows, but I'm really excited to get inside and feel the energy that I've been hearing about for so many years.
I do just want to make a small correction. Steve Poltz and Jewel never married. They briefly dated, but they were never married. Still, it's super cool that you've gotten to collaborate with Andy Frasco and a bunch of other really awesome musicians as a result, and I'm very excited to continue seeing what you do. This is the third act I have brought back for a second interview since I took over Music of the Mountains in mid-2021. The first two acts were Derek Dames-Old, who I first interviewed in 2022 and brought back the next year, and Gasoline Lollipops, who I initially interviewed in 2022 and brought back this year. But I figured it was a great time to bring Andrew back to promote his new solo show at Eldora, as well as air his original podcast interview for the first time. So thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on board twice and letting me air both interviews for this week's Music of the Mountains and Then and Now episode of the Mountaineer Podcast. You can see Andrew Cooney performing live in Timbers Tap House at Eldora. The general address for the ski resort is 2861 Eldora Ski Road in Nederland, and he will be performing in Timbers Tap House on Saturday, November 30th, 2024, starting at noon. And as a reminder, the tribute group Jammy Buffett will be performing at the Gold Hill Inn, located 401 Main Street in Gold Hill, on Friday, December 6th, starting at 8 p.m. If you want to keep up with Andrew Cooney's musical efforts, then be sure to check out Andrew Cooney Music on Facebook, Rufus_Wilbury, that's RUFUS_WILBURY on Instagram, and his website to learn more about his music. His website URL is somewhat long and not very intuitive for me to read on a podcast episode, so I will leave a link to the website in the description of the podcast episode below, and you can also find a link to the website on the digital edition of this week's Music of the Mountains column. 10th Mountain Division has released a couple of albums in the past, so you can check those out wherever you get your music. And speaking of Derek Dames-Old, he and Andrew Cooney have released 2 songs together. You can find live performances of 2 songs, Stoner Rap and My Whole Life Smells, parentheses, like weed, wherever you get your music. And of course, be sure to keep an eye out for his future projects, including announcements of any solo material coming out and the next album from Andy Frasco and the UN. And now for this week's music mentions. Head to Eldora Mountain Resort, located at 2861 Eldora Ski Road in Nederland, on Wednesday, November 27th at noon to see PJ Moon in Timbers Tap House. On Friday, November 29th, starting at 9 a.m. to see DJ Cha-Cha in the Boombox. On Friday, November 29th, starting at noon to see Will Whalen, the artist in residence, performing in Timbers Tap House. On Saturday, November 30th, starting at 9 a.m. to see KHU in the Boombox, and Saturday, November 30th, starting at noon, to see Andrew Cooney performing live. Head to the Gold Hill Inn, located at 401 Main Street in Gold Hill on Friday, November 29th, starting at 8 p.m. for a very special event. It's advertised in the paper as Pick and Howl, but that's not quite what it's going to be, because this is a slightly different show. It's bringing together a bunch of different musicians for a new supergroup, Electric Howl, including Tyler Gwinn, the original drummer of 10th Mountain Division. The group is called Electric Howl primarily because Jeremy Richard of Pick and Howl writes many of the songs and plays guitar for the group. Also contributing to the songwriting is Dave Pullins from the Caribou Mountain Collective and No Go Gillbillies. He'll also be playing organ and keys. Other featured performers include Tyler Gwinn on drums, of course, Andrew Gordon on pedal steel and lap steel, Paul Larson on banjo, Curly Collins on bass, and Melissa McGinley-Stube on fiddle. Be sure to head over there on Friday, November 29th, 2024, starting at 8 p.m. to see an awesome supergroup. There will be a $15 cash cover charge. Oh, and here's a podcast exclusive announcement. You can also head over there on Saturday, November 30th, starting at 7 p.m. to see Avasso performing live. Head to the Jamestown Mercantile, located at 108 Main Street in Jamestown on Wednesday, November 27th, starting at 5 p.m. for an open mic night. Head to Knotted Root Brewing, located at 250 North Caribou Street in Nederland on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. for an open mic night, on Fridays at 7:30 p.m. for a DJ night, on every second Friday at 7:30 p.m. for a reggae DJ night, and every Sunday at 5 p.m. for Jazz Sundays. And finally, pick your preference. If you want to head over to Gilpin County, then be sure to head to the Very Nice Brewing Company location at 180 Jankowski Drive in Blackhawk on Friday, November 29th, starting at 6 p.m. to see Dan Williams performing live, and on Saturday, November 30th, starting at 5 p.m. to see the Kirk Larson Trio performing live. If you want to head over to Nederland, then be sure to head over to 20 East Lakeview Drive, number 112 in the Caribou Village Shopping Center on Friday, November 29th, starting at 6 p.m. to see Derek Dames Old performing live, and on Saturday, November 30th, starting at 5 p.m. to see the Dollhouse Thieves performing live. Did we miss you or your performances? Want to submit your music listing in the Peak to Peak area? Do you have updates to your business or to your performances? Please call 303-810-5409 or email info@themountaineer.com to be included in the next print edition or the next podcast of The Mountaineer. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in to this week's Music of the Mountains / Then and Now episode of the Mountaineer podcast. If you want to share this episode or others around with whoever you see fit, then be sure to head to our podcast's main hub at the mtnearpodcast.buzzsprout.com or to our primary website homepage at the mtnear.com, scrolling down all the way to the bottom to find the full archive of our episodes. And if you would like to be a part of the podcast, whether you have something that you want to promote or a segment that you want to share or advertising that you want us to put on the podcast, whatever it may be, if you're involved in the Peak to Peak area in some way and you want to be involved in the podcast, then be sure to email me at media@themountaineer.com and we'll get something sorted for you. Speaking of themountaineer.com, here's another quick message brought to you by The Mountaineer.
At The Mountaineer, we have been working hard on our new website. The new site is up, and through November, it is completely free to check out. That's located at www.themountaineer.com.
All right, I think that's about it for this episode. Tune in Monday for another Miscellaneous Monday edition of the Mountaineer Podcast. Have a great rest of your day.
I ain't got shit else to do but think about you in your cowboy boots and bathing suit. And nothing to say, I'm just...
Well, there's no point in censoring this. The swear word is in the title. The song is called Shit Else to Do, parentheses, cowboy boots and bathing suits, and it is written and performed by Andrew Cooney. This particular performance was live at the Muse Performance Space, and you can watch this and 2 other live performances from the Muse Performance Space, as well as a video from a quarantine live stream on Andrew Cooney's YouTube channel, Andrew Cooney Music. That's also his Facebook handle. You can follow him on Instagram at Rufus_Wilbury, and you can check out his website by going to the link in the podcast description below. Also be sure to check out Andrew Cooney performing solo at Eldora on Saturday, November 30th in Timbers Tap House, starting at noon.
Since you've gone away, yesterday looks a lot like today, with a rock and a glass and no hope for tomorrow. Even the ice keeps on melting away, and I'm left sitting here with this half-empty bottle. I ain't got shit else to do but think about you in your cowboy boots and bathing suit. Nothing to say, I'm just wasting my days in this lonely place since you've gone away.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local peak-to-peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.